Hi, everyone. Sorry, we're just giving people a minute to come in the room. So we're just shooting the breeze until we start.
I think it was an SGM with 600 plus people at Wimbledon Theatre.
Okay. Oh, yeah, of course.
I think
Okay.
It might have been the AGM, but I don't remember it being the AGM.
So I'm going to get going in a second with the numbers stabilizing, I think. We good to go?
Go.
Go.
You remember?
Are you a member of the Don's Trust? Yeah, she is.
Cool. Okay. We're going to get started. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 2020 Don's Trust AGM. I'm Mark Davis, Don's Trust Chair, for at least a couple of hours longer. I don't think we've had any apologies from board members, but any apologies will be noted in the minutes. Because it's a formal AGM, there's quite a lot of formal business to get through. We'll try and get through the boring formal stuff as quickly as we reasonably can so that we leave time for questions and discussion. And that'll be an opportunity to hear and about lots of things from members of the Don's Trust board and also the football club board senior management. And we will, I'm sure, touch on the London Broncos proposal, which was the week's news, for example. You can ask questions as we go along via the Q&A function on Zoom. So you should all see a Q&A bubble at the bottom where you can ask us questions. Don't ask us questions via chat. Ask us questions via the Q&A. And if you could keep your questions on the topic we're on at the moment, we'll have general Q&A later, but that will be helpful. This is our third online meeting. Thanks to those who gave feedback on the previous ones. We've taken on board some of that feedback and hope we get better at these as time goes by. The meeting is being recorded, will be posted on Pro Boards afterwards. To answer Laurent's question, we will take a 5-minute comfort break at some point between 8:30 and 9. And I'd be grateful if colleagues could give me a reminder when we get to 8:30 or give me a nudge at a suitable opportunity if it looks like I'm forgetting. And Laurent, feel free to jump in on that too. We'll aim to finish between about 9:30 and 10. Just how long it takes depends on how quickly you get through the formal business and how many other things you'd like to talk about. Before we get stuck in, a few introductory comments. So this time last year, we were in a very difficult situation with the financing of the stadium. I'm sure you all remember. It's fantastic that we got through the last year with the stadium built. We owe a lot to the members who got the Plough Lane bond together, as well as the people who invested it. We're also really pleased to be able to get Nick Robertson on board as an investor and MSP Capital as a lender, and on terms that mean we, the Don's Trust, are still in control of AFC Wimbledon. And we owe a huge amount to Joe Palmer and his team for all the hard work that's gone into making the project happen. We've had to do this in the middle of an unparalleled crisis. The pandemic has placed enormous strains on everyone, including the club, and our financial results for the year will no doubt reflect that. The need for social distancing obviously means we haven't been able to play in front of crowds yet, so it's taken a bit of the gloss off what should be one of the proudest moments in this club's history when we re-emerged at Plough Lane. So we look forward to the pandemic going away, to resuming our lives, to holding these meetings in person, and above all, to welcoming you to our new home at Plough Lane and to celebrating that properly. So procedures this evening, we're going to use the same voting procedures tonight that we used at the SGM in September. So that means that all of the proxy votes that have been sent in before the deadline, all legal votes, to quote Donald Trump, will be counted alongside people who vote online this evening. And as a formality, that means that all the votes this evening will be through a poll rather than a show of hands. We'll count up the online votes and add them after the event to the proxy votes. We'll check that there's been no one who's voted twice and remove any duplicates. So it may take us a day or two to complete that process, and we'll publish the formal results on the Don's Trust website and Pro Boards as we did in September. So the results this evening, other than, the board election, won't be final, although hopefully we'll get a very good indication from the online votes which way members are leaning on the resolutions. When it comes to a vote, as I read out each resolution, you will also see it appear on your screen. For each resolution, you will be given 90 seconds. I need a timer to enter your vote. After voting for each resolution, we'll display the result of each vote for a further 30 seconds. But like I just said, that won't be the definitive formal outcome of the vote. Some people said they found it easier to vote using a laptop or a desktop computer rather than a mobile phone. So if you're on a mobile but have a laptop, you might want to switch over. All of the votes today will require a simple majority, with the exception of Resolution 3, which is about our change of registered address in the Constitution, which requires a 2/3 majority. And all of the resolutions today are recommended by the Don's Trust Board. So, Hannah, would you be happy to tell people which buttons members need to press when it comes to voting?
Yes, there are. You've covered most of it. And George, could you run the first poll? This is a test that we're doing now, just so people are familiar with how it runs. Okay. So you should see now the test poll that's come up. The introduction of VAR into the Premier League has been good for the game of football. If you just click your vote and submit, and it will take, George will be timing that, and then after the 90 seconds we'll show the results to everybody. I'm copying and pasting into the chat now a link to the proxy form for the all the resolutions that we're going to be voting on tonight, just so you can see it's worthwhile opening that so you can see all of the full wording of the resolutions. There's just one or two that didn't quite squeeze into the wording, so we just had to crop them slightly. But if you look at that to know what you're voting on, and if you have any questions, please just message me in the chat. But otherwise, I hope it works well for everybody.
Okay, so are we ready? I hasten to add that unfortunately that won't have any formal impact on what goes on in the real world. But people have voted. I didn't realize I didn't get to do it myself. And 25% of people think VAR has been a good thing, 63% think it's not been a good thing, and 12% abstained according to that. So that is our dry run of that. Now, perhaps put in the Q&A or something if that vote failed to appear on your screen. Okay. So we're now going to go on to the formal business. So the first thing is approval of the September minutes. If there are any comments or questions on the September SGM minutes, then put them in the Q&A function now. Now, where do I? There are no open questions. So now this isn't a formal vote. This is just like something we do on a show of hands. So are we ready? Are people content to show? George, if you could display that. So can you vote now or indicate whether you're content to approve the annual report and accounts for the year end? No, that's the wrong one. Do we not have the September minutes one? Close that. Don't vote on resolution 1. We'll come back to that. Okay, so unless anyone puts in the Q&A that they have objections to the September minutes, I'm going to take them as read. I can't see any open questions, so I'm going to take those as read. We've had one abstention though. Thank you. Okay, great. So we'll move on again to the outcome of the 2020 board election, and I'm going to invite Alex Folkes, the new chair of the election steering group, to report the outcome of the 2020 board elections.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm going to go very briefly through some of the stats and some of the outcomes from the election. Members will find that there is a formal report on the Dons Trust website, as well as a couple of annexes. I encourage you to read that. And if you have any questions, even if it's after the meeting today and you want to get in touch, please do so. This is, as I said, a mechanics report. We're going to produce a second report, hopefully for January, from the ESG, which is going to make recommendations for the future. In order to do that, I would encourage everybody who's on this meeting and anybody else who has a view to get in touch with us, because we want to make sure our elections as a fan-owned club are as good as possible. So for this year's elections, the ESG received 11 nominations, and each of those was valid. Each candidate was invited to submit a manifesto of up to 800 words and a précis manifesto of up to 120 words, and they did that. We then ordered the candidates on the ballot paper. Neil Springate, who was our independent scrutineer, who's a member of the Fulham Trust, did that for us, and he was in charge of overseeing the entire election. The manifestos were then listed in reverse order. Owing to COVID, obviously the normal campaign activity, especially on match days, was not possible. We anticipated this in our rules and reminded candidates of their responsibility to adhere to government guidelines to protect the reputation of the Dons Trust and of the club. We anticipated that the 9 Years team would want to host a hustings, and they did so on Saturday the 15th of November, and many thanks indeed to them. Although the ESG has no power to control the editorial content of an independent group like 9 Years, we asked them, as we would have asked others, to give equal access to all candidates, and of course they happily did that, with each candidate having a 20-minute interview with one of their team. We did seek other groups who might be associated with the club, who might be willing to host a campaign event, a hustings or whatever. Sadly, none of them were forthcoming, but we think that that's important for the future. At the time we closed the membership list, which was the deadline for nominations, there were 3,415 Dons Trust members. Of those, 210 requested a paper ballot, and one other member requested a paper ballot who normally receives email communications. Obviously, paper ballots cost the trust more money, so we would always ask members to move online wherever possible. There were 52 email addresses which were shared between at least 2 members. In order to facilitate these members, we sent out ballot emails in batches, and that made sure that everybody had a vote. Of the 3,205 email ballots, SurveyMonkey records informed us that 16 bounced for one reason or another. The records also informed us that 38 people had opted out of SurveyMonkey. We managed to get 8 of these people to opt back in. For the remainder and the bounced emails, we set up a web link to the ballot form, which we sent out via MailChimp, and in some cases individually from the elections address. Now that isn't perfect, and that's something else that we're going to be recommending for change for the future. During the period of the ballot, we sent out 4 reminder emails. Each was sent to people who had not yet voted and who opted for online voting. We didn't think that the cost of mailing reminders to paper voters could be justified, especially as we had no track of who had voted at that stage, and therefore we would have to mail all of them each time. I can say that the reminder emails were very productive. The 4 highest days for voting, apart from the very first days, were immediately after we sent out reminder emails. And in the last 2 days of voting, 379 people voted. The results: there were 1,310 ballots cast via the normal SurveyMonkey and 10 ballots cast via the special web link procedure. 59 paper ballots were returned, of which 2 were invalid by reason of being blank or spoiled. This represented a 40.3% overall turnout, which was an increase of 10% on last year. My history of working with private organisations and balloting and internal elections, that 40% turnout is incredibly good. I think with the Don's Trust it can go higher still, but I think that the club should and the trust should be very proud of that. So the result, and this is in ballot paper order: Luke Mackenzie 707 votes, Freddie Flaxman 300 votes, Xavier Wiggins 889 votes, Charlie Talbot 744 votes, Trevor Williams 556 votes, Andy Sylvester 326 votes, Roger Hobkinson 381 votes, Niall Cooper 634 votes, Hannah Kitcher 1062 votes, Phil Moody 158 votes, and Dennis Lowndes 529 votes. That meant that Hannah Kitcher, Xavier Wiggins, Charlie Talbot and Luke Mackenzie were elected to the 2-year terms, and Niall Cooper was elected to fill the remainder of the 1-year term for Mark Davis following his resignation. A couple of checks we made. It is possible to record via SurveyMonkey the number of ballots cast electronically on each day, and also to see for whom each ballot was cast, although we only produced this in an anonymised form and no member of the ESG actually looked at how people voted. The reasons for doing that were to check if there was any potential for any fraud or anything untoward, and we found no evidence of that. You can find in the annexes 2 graphs which show the progression of each candidate's votes, which are relatively straight lines indicating that there wasn't anything untoward, and also the turnout per day, which shows where those spikes were. So I'd just like to finish by saying I give my thanks to all the candidates and the members of the Don's Trust for their participation. I also want to thank the current members of the Don's Trust Board and John Stembridge and David Grounds for their assistance with the election. Neil Springate, George Jones and Julian Edwards provided great support and ideas, and I thank them for their commitment as members of the ESG and as our independent scrutineer, but my special thanks goes to David Hall, without whom I couldn't possibly have managed this whole process and has been invaluable to it. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. If anybody has any suggestions they would like to make about the future conduct of the elections, if they want to make them here, that's fine. Up to you, Chair, of course, but if not, if they want to email elections@thedonstrust.org with any sort of suggestions, we will be reading those. But any factual questions, I'd be more than happy to answer now.
Okay, thank you very much. So do pop up any questions for Alex. There are no questions yet as such, but I do want to echo what David Cox has just said and formally thank the ESG, Alex, David, George and Julian, and our independent scrutineer, Neil. The board looks forward to receiving further recommendations from the ESG on elections. I also want to pay tribute to John Dolan, the former chair of the ESG, who decided to take a well-earned break. Congratulations to all of the successful candidates, Hannah, Xavier, Charlie, Luke, Niall. Now, I just wonder if it's possible for them each in turn just literally to wave and say hello. I suspect you know a number of them, but Hannah, wave and say hello. Zav.
Hi.
Can't see Zav. Hopefully others can.
Hi, thank
Great.
you.
Charlie.
Hello, good evening.
Luke.
Hello, good evening.
Is Niall there?
Yeah, hello, good evening, everybody.
Great, thank you. And so for the record, Charlie, Luke and Niall become board members at the close of the meeting. And the 5 elected candidates will serve alongside Jane, Edward, Tim and Graham and form the new board. Commiserations to the unsuccessful candidates, Trevor, Dennis, Roger, Andy, Freddie, Phil. Thank you very much for standing. And thank you to the outgoing Don's Trust board members, Anna Kingsley, Anne Williams, Alistair Brown and me, and I'll say goodbye later. So that's the end of that item. The next thing is the Don's Trust report and accounts. So I'd like to introduce Michele Little, the Don's Trust treasurer. Very grateful to Michele for producing the accounts. Michele, would you like to just mention any headline items from the financial results?
Okay, thanks, Mark. First of all, I think the membership income year on year was very similar to 2019, so there's not much to say there. Our income overall was boosted by a bequest in someone's will. Someone very, very kindly left the trust £25,000, and that's fed straight into our results and boosted the income significantly. Our costs are up a little bit, but that's mainly because this year the audit fee is being charged direct to the trust. In previous years, the club has paid our share of the audit fee, but we decided this year that the trust should bear its own costs. So overall, the profit for the year was up 18,000, which is a great result. On the balance sheet, the numbers look dramatically different from last year. And that is, of course, down to the Plough Lane bond. So our assets are up by 5.3 million because we've lent that money onto the club and the club owes that money back to the trust. And we've also got equally matched liabilities, which is the money we owe back to all of the kind people who invested in the Plough Lane bond. So that's all I wanted to say, really. Our membership is up slightly from just over 3,000 to just under 3,500 at the end of June. And we've seen post-year end quite a big increase as a result of the Dons Trust Plus membership. So that will feed through in next year's accounts, but a good result. That's all from me.
Okay, and just to clarify, that number that Michele read doesn't include junior dons who aren't formally members of the society. Are there any questions? We've answered one question. Are there any further questions? We'll obviously come on to the club's accounts a bit later, but are there any questions? It doesn't appear that way, in which case I'm going to, in a second, when I say, George, because with all the 90 seconds and stuff, I'm going to invite you to vote on approving the report and accounts. And brilliantly, I haven't printed out the resolution, but it will appear on the screen shortly. So, George, go for it, and I shall read it out when it comes up. So, you've got 1.5 minutes to approve the Society's annual report and accounts for the year ended 30th of June 2020. Yes, no, or abstain. We are going to find out that 1.5 minutes is actually quite a long time as we vote. So if anyone wants to pop up any questions, further questions on the accounts while we're doing it, just for out of interest, feel free to do so. So we're halfway through. And Jane, I might get you to read out 1 or 2 of the resolutions later. That's very kind. Thank you. I got half a minute left. Yeah, and I agree. I did think about whether we could get that theme tune. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. 94% indicated in favour, none against, and 6% abstain. So just to repeat what I said earlier, that needs to be added to the proxies that have been sent in advance. So that isn't a formal result this evening. Oh gosh. Sorry, my time was making a funny noise. Can I just ask before we go on, that 1.5 minutes felt quite long to me. can you object in the Q&A function if you object to me cutting it down to 1 minute on subsequent questions? Just say that did feel quite a long time. I've not seen any objections. Okay, all right. So thank you for that. So we now go on to the reappointment of the auditors. I agree with Paul Good that new members should stand up and sing a song. So BDO audit both the club and trust, and we'll be turning to the approval of BDO as the club's auditor later in the evening. BDO are here this evening. Do you just want to say hello, BDO?
Yeah, hi Mark. It's Chris Wingrave from BDO here.
Chris, thank you for joining us. Michele and Tom, say if you've got any comments on BDO's reappointment before we ask questions on their reappointment.
I'm very happy to reappoint. It was a very smooth process. Thank you.
Thank you for getting us there on time, Chris.
Yeah, I would echo those sentiments, and we've had a good track record with BDO. They know all the history and everything which is going on at the club at the minute, so it'd be really useful to have them around again next year. They've done a great job.
Okay, thank you. So are there any questions before we put that to the vote? I don't see any questions. So George, if you could kindly do the honours, and I'm going to give you a minute this time to vote, starting now, on to reappoint BDO LLP as auditors of the society for the year to 30th of June 2021. Yes, no, or abstain. And Karen, I think it was Niall that sneezed. Okay, another 15 seconds. Okay. So can we see the thing? So provisional 96% in favour, 1% against, and 3% abstain. Thank you very much. So the next formal bit of business is the Dons Trust registered office. So now that we've moved to Plough Lane, we need to change the registered address of the Dons Trust and all the subsidiaries for that matter away from Kings Meadow. In the case of the Dons Trust, the registered address is recorded in the Constitution. So we actually need to change the Constitution as well as register the change of the address with the FCA. So this resolution is to change the registered address set out in the Constitution. And in common with most other changes to the Constitution, it requires a 2/3 majority. So are there any questions on that? I don't see any questions. So George, if you could kindly show the resolution. We've got a minute to delete the first sentence of Rule 111 of the Society's Constitution, which reads, the Society's registered office is at Kings Meadow Stadium, KT13PB, and insert in its place, the Society's registered office is at Plough Lane Stadium, Plough Lane, SW17 0NR. So please go for it. Be a shame if all that time everyone votes that they wanted to be at Kings Meadow. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. And 99% in favour, 1% against. Okay. Thank you. So the next set of resolutions relate to Don's Trust voting at the AFCW PLC AGM. So the PLC is holding its AGM tomorrow morning. It wasn't possible to combine the two AGMs this year, and due to COVID restrictions on public gatherings, the PLC AGM will be a very short closed meeting. However, whilst Trust members can't attend the PLC AGM, all the items being discussed there will be discussed here this evening, and with one exception, which I'll come to, you have the opportunity this evening to decide how the Trust votes should be cast, and the way the Trust votes is cast will determine the outcome of the decision, because we have the majority vote. So the first item that we will be voting on is the AFCW PLC annual report and accounts. And we have Tom Rawcliffe here this evening to present the accounts. Tom.
Yeah, evening everyone, hope you're well. I'll run through the headline figures and then I'll take any questions after that if anyone feels the need to dig a little deeper. So our turnover for this year was 4.7 million. That's 1.1 million less than last year. The main cause of this reduction is the fact we had a great cup run to the 5th round in the previous financial year, and that really accounts for nearly £1 million of that movement downwards in revenue. We also only had one shirt on sale from the merchandise, for instance, as opposed to 2 new kits this year. So there was a drop in £50,000 on the merchandise side of things, and the sponsorship also reduced pretty much directly off the back of having fewer opportunities through the cup runs. As you'll probably be aware, we didn't play all the fixtures, so that has also had a detrimental impact on the football income, as well as more notably on the bar income in the accounts. You'll see the bar income is quite substantially down, and we had planned and hoped for a good farewell to Kings Meadow on the drinking front. We didn't have that, so as a result, the income fell there. On the profit and loss side of things, we have an underlying loss of £650,000, and this is reached in the accounts by taking the gross loss, then taking off the admin expenses, and then adding on the player sales. That's our almost day-to-day trading, as it were. So that number is not immediately apparent in the accounts, but that's what we will work to, and that's an improvement on the prior year where we had an underlying loss of 1.4 million. We budgeted for a loss, as most of you know, of £1 million a year, of £1 million this year, as we did the previous financial year. So this is an improvement on the position we thought we'd end up in. This was achieved through a lower playing budget and really tight cost control, as well as reducing our expenditure as a result of COVID. So we didn't get income in, but also we weren't paying out a larger amount of cost as well. We had 2 sales in the year. We had the sale of Toby Civic to Barnsley in July 2019. That was reinvested nearly in full into the playing budget. And then we sold a young lad, Leo Castledine, to Chelsea in March, just as COVID was really striking. So that was a boost for us, and we could keep that in reserve. As a result of that, we're in a better position than we thought at the end of the year cash-wise, and that's then enabled us to, it's given us a bit of comfort and a bit of a blanket going into the current season, because we beat the budget essentially, which is great news. You'll also notice in the accounts that there's other income of over 13 million, which is a ginormous figure. The vast majority of that, so 13 million exactly, is part of the Section 106 income we received from Galliards. We received 1 million of that in the previous financial year, and then the remaining 13 million in this year, and we've taken that and recognised that all as income. There is an additional £350,000 of other income, and that relates to grants in respect of COVID, the vast majority being the job retention scheme payments for the staff who were furloughed during the year. And again, that helps us, that helped improve our position on a cash basis, which was hugely useful going into this really uncertain season. On the balance sheet, you'll see that there's a big increase in spend on tangible assets, which is all the spend we made in the year on the new stadium, So up to the end of 30th of June 2020, that was an additional 17 million in that 12-month period. So you can quite easily see where the money's going. We had a cash balance at the year end of £10 million, or just shy of £10 million, which sounds great, but obviously that is a ring fence for spend, or the vast majority of that is ring fence for spend on the new stadium. So that's received the majority of the bond money, the money from Nick Robertson, and the Cedars money close to the year end, which is why we've got such a positive cash figure there. But I'll just reiterate that is earmarked for the stadium. That's not for putting into the playing budget for the 2020-21 season. There's an increase in creditors due after 1 year, and as Michele's mentioned from the Don's Trust accounts, this is exactly in its entirety to do with the Plough Lane bond and the various different repayments lengths we have involved with that. And then we've also got movement in share capital off the back of the shares we've issued during the year. So those are the big movements on the balance sheet. I know I often get asked about the wages. So those of you who've seen the wages notes will see that overall we spent pretty much exactly £1 million less on wages than last year. That predominantly goes back to the conscious decision to reduce the playing budget for the 2019-20 season. There's also a reduction in player bonuses as well as a result of not reaching the 5th round of the FA Cup and not having that good cup run. We also paid a lot less in manager termination payments in the year as well. The eagle-eyed of you amongst you will have noticed that we have a note surrounding the uncertainty and going concern. This is directly linked to COVID-19, given the uncertain times and what would happen if football didn't take place or we continued with really low attendances. This is obviously a problem if that was to occur, but since we've signed these accounts, we've had the benefit of Premier League funding money come in, which a lot of you will have seen. And we've also had a bit more good news about the rollout of the vaccine. So I think we're in a stronger position than that might suggest, but at the time that was the right thing to put in the accounts. So we can explain this going forward as to why it's there. If there's any questions, then please feel free to shout. I'll just dip in the Q&A.
So we've got a couple, Tom, but before you answer them, can I just echo Rob's thanks to you for all the work you've done during COVID and indeed for getting the accounts done. And if I didn't say likewise to Michele, that was an oversight on my part. So there are a couple of questions. I am, by the way, going to come back at the end of this item to what happens for those people who for some reason didn't see the vote thing come up. But Tom, so we're still using the furlough scheme?
So we used it going into this year. At the minute, we don't have any staff who are furloughed.
Cool. And then what, if any, ongoing saving are we making that is caused by the new salary cap?
Yeah, good question. So last year, the salary cap wouldn't have affected us and how we went about our business. And again, I suspect with a lot of teams, it doesn't really affect us this year, but it's something we need to take into account and consider going forward into next season. So we are looking at that already and making sure we comply with that. But really, we need to make sure that we don't overstretch ourselves and we put a fair budget together first internally, and then seeing how the salary cap would apply. But we are very conscious of that moving forward.
And is there a projection on when we'd reach a profit, or are times too uncertain?
Again, a very good question. So our business plan, we're obviously expecting to make a profit. That's what we need to do as a fan-owned club and a club which is self-sustainable. So this year, I guess, is a strange one, as you all expect. But from next year, when we're fully in that stadium, it's operating, we will be hitting a profit. We've got to.
Okay, thanks. So if there are any more questions for Tom, put them in the Q&A function. In that case, I'm going to invite George to put up the resolution, if he would, George. And the resolution is to authorise the Don's Trust Board to cast the trust votes at AFCW PLC's annual general meeting in favour of approving the AFCW PLC accounts for the year ended 30th of June 2020. So that's up there for voting. Please vote. And just while that's going through, is the club planning to take on any more debt, Tom?
No, we're not. We're capped currently at £11 million of debt, so I think we'd have to go back and request more if we were going to go down that route. But no, we're not looking at taking on any further debt, although I'll caveat that by saying we have the bridging loan in place and we will need to refinance that.
Yeah, and we haven't drawn all of the bridging loan yet, so that's still being drawn down.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so that's fine. That's finished. You could finish that now. And 97%, these are provisional for the reasons I described, in favour, 1% against, and 3% abstain. So thank you once again for that. So now it seems that some people didn't, or at least one of the votes, didn't see the voting button. So what we're going to do is those people who didn't vote, and clearly we will check that you didn't vote, could you by 11 p.m. email secretary@thedonstrust.org, put in the heading AGM vote, indicate which resolution, that for instance that was resolution 3 we just voted, and how you want to vote, yes, no, or abstain, if you didn't get the bubble that invited you to vote. I don't know if that was just a one-off or whether that's recurred for subsequent ones. So very quickly, so Tom I think has answered Tim's question and Ian's question. So does the club have a clear programme for the repayment of existing debt and interest? Edward, would you like to tell us about the formation of the finance committee?
Sure. So, I mean, we've had one meeting. We set up a committee of volunteers. So there was a call for volunteers a couple of months ago, and we've formed a finance committee. And really, the focus is on, well, the short-term focus anyway is on refinancing the bridging loan. I can't say we have a clear program in the sense that we don't have a replacement lender lined up, but we have a clear schedule of activities, and we know what we're doing, so that in up to 18 months' time, when the bridging loan needs to be repaid, that we will have a replacement debt in place.
Brilliant, thank you.
Just remember, we're still drawing down the bridging loan, so it's quite early days still.
Yeah. And then Rob Crane has asked why we're capped at 11 million of debt, and the answer is because there is a provision in the Articles of Association capping our debt, and actually 11 million debt is in excess of what that would allow. So, but we are able to, and have gone to shareholders, and actually the Dons Trust members have approved us doing so, to borrow beyond that up to an amount of 11 million. I think at the time we did it, we thought it would be, it should be 10 million, but let's just have a bit of a buffer. I suspect we will end up relatively close to 11 million, but clearly the more we borrow, the more we have to service and refinance, Rob. So it needs to be at an amount that is not way too excessive. Okay, so I'm going to move, and then one further question, maybe Edward, since you're on camera, any news regarding Cedars? Received email asking for further investment.
Peter, I'm afraid you missed it. So we had a little further investment from a couple of people, and because of that, Cedars had the right to follow on their investment. So they ran a mini campaign over the last 2 weeks or so, which I think closed just at the end of last week. So I'm afraid you missed that. But we raised £57,000 from Cedars investors who were looking to follow on their previous investment, which is terrific.
That is terrific. And before we move on to the next item, when you do email David, the secretary at the Dons Trust, indicating if you haven't been able to vote, Andy Ramsden has pointed out that there might be a difference between the resolution number on the proxy form that you should have, and the resolution number that or the vote number that I'm reading out, which is odd, but use the one on the proxy form. And apologies if there is that discrepancy. Okay, I'm going to move on to the reappointment of BDO as the AFCW PLC's auditors. So again, this is how the trust is going to cast its vote tomorrow. Are there any questions anyone want to ask? There are, and the question is, how long have BDO been auditors for the trust and club, and is it good or bad practice to use the same auditors each year? Tom, would you like to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. So BDO have been in situ for a long time. I would assume 10 years plus, but you're right, it is bad practice to use the same audit team every year. So what we did 3 years ago is we've moved offices, so we have a brand new team, or we did have a brand new team on it 3 years ago, which is when I came in. So we've all seen it new, and we are getting new challenges off the back of that. As I said previously, they do know where the club is at. They know the history and what we're trying to do, which aids understanding in the audit process, and to my mind helps expedite things, which is really useful and goes a long way to us, enabling us to sign off the accounts on time this year, which has been great. Also with BDO, they're a very reputable firm, a really good firm, and as we go out and seek refinancing on the loan, that's an auditor who people will trust. So it's a good relationship for my money. That's a very fair question. By and large, you wouldn't have the same people coming in year in, year out for however many years, but we have changed it relatively recently, and that would need to happen again in the future if we were to stay with BDO.
Okay, are there any more questions on that? Is there a DTB recommendation how often we rotate change auditors? I'm not aware of any extant DTB policy on that, Adam. So we obviously listen to the club on their views on auditors and our treasurer, obviously, because we use the same accountant, but there isn't a formal policy on that. So I'd now like to invite the resolution. Can somebody confirm? So the resolution, which I think is resolution 5 on my piece of paper, I hope that's right, to authorise the Dons Trust Board to cast the trust votes or AFCW PLC's annual general meeting in favour of approving the reappointment of BDO LLP as auditors of AFCW PLC for the year to 30th June 2021, and authorising the directors to agree the auditors' remuneration. So if you could vote on that. So we've got half a minute left, or a bit under. We're rattling through them. Okay, we're done. So 93% in favour, 2% against, 5% abstain. Thank you very much. So that's provisional. So we now move on, and thank you to BDO for their services over the past year. So the next item is the re-election of an AFCW PLC director. So this is described in paper 4, and in short, the re-election of AFCW PLC directors is rotated, and it's Ian McNay's turn. Ian's provided a statement in the paper about himself, but Ian is here this evening to say hello and answer any questions. So before I invite Ian to speak, I'll just mention 2 things. The first is the Dons Trust Board will be nominating 2 of its own nominees to the PLC board members very shortly, to ensure that the trust's majority on the PLC board is in place, and those names will be put to you for ratification at the next SGM. The board intends to undertake a governance review over the coming months. The way the boards are structured will be part of that review. So it's possible there'll be some proposals to change the structure and composition of the PLC board following that review. So Ian, would you like to say hello and anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, hello everybody. You can see me, but I can't see everybody out there, of course. But I want to just start by saying just very briefly what the PLC board, the function is. And it is the function to represent all shareholders. Obviously, the Don's Trust holds just over 75% of the shares, but there are quite a few minority shareholders, in fact, over 1,000. Some like Nick Robertson is quite significant, others, most of them are very, very small, and most of them supporters. So overall, that's the important function it does. And also, it's been meeting regularly over the last 18 months or so, and it is an advisory board to the Don's Trust board on the business and financial side of matters. So the PLC board can look more clearly and more detail at some of the issues that are facing the club on the financial side, and there's been obviously quite a lot recently, and then report back to the Don's Trust board. The PLC board is not a decision-making board as such, because obviously the Don's Trust has a majority, and there's 4 on the PLC board, there's 4 Don's Trust directors, and there's 3 other non-executive directors. One is Joe Palmer, and there's Mick Buckley and myself. As Mark said, there is a governance review in process, which has been initiated by the Don's Trust board, and there may well be a change in the future, and that may or may not involve me. But as things stand, I would like to be re-elected and continue my work. I did do a paper which mentioned some of my experience. I'm on lots of other boards, and I feel I bring a lot in terms of business experience to that board. I also like to make it clear I'm 100% in favour of the Don's Trust ownership of the club continuing, and that's really about it. I did have some declarations of interest at the end there, which you may want to ask about. That's all I have to say, really.
Oops. Okay. So thank you. So we've had a few questions, Ian. There's one that is a couple, I think, that are directed at the Don's Trust board members. But before I invite colleagues to speak, or if they wish to, there's a question from Ian Marriott. Do you think you can represent the majority of shareholders when you said at the DTB meeting this time last year that fan ownership doesn't work?
Well, I chose my words very carefully that evening. Unfortunately, things have been slightly misconstrued. I pointed out the dangers of fan ownership, because at that point Wickham was almost an administration, but was saved by American owners coming in. I pointed out that Wrexham was in trouble. They now have outside owners. And I pointed out that FC United had got relegated and were in trouble. I actually referred to Exeter, who seemed to be successful at fan ownership. And when I said seemed to be, I spent an hour or so quite soon after that meeting talking to the Exeter City Trust chairman, making lots of notes, because Exeter, we can learn a bit from Exeter. And I passed all my notes on to the Don's Trust board on that. So yes, I am in favour. I'm not against, but it was a rocky time for fan ownership. And I think the great thing now is Newport are also fan ownership. They're doing really well this season. Exeter are also in the playoffs of League Two. So it's turning around, which is very encouraging. Okay, and then there's another question for you, Ian. Where do you stand currently on outside investment and or control? Well, I'm against outside control. With outside investment, I'm a businessman. I do have concerns, because we're carrying a £10 million debt. And to be clear, that's not to do with shares, that's money we owe. And I think a lot of people know the clock's ticking, and we have to pay back the £4 million plus loan by February 2022. I know Edward's formed a committee to look into that, which is great. But things are not guaranteed in terms of we're going to get the loan. Things are not guaranteed in terms of what's going to happen next season with the budget we've got through this season, because we had the non-refundable season tickets and the debentures, which was brilliant, of course. And I think we have to keep a close tab on where we are with regard to finances. But I'm positive. I think it will all work out.
Okay, thank you, Ian. So then there's a question from Chris Stewart. And I think it's sort of, I'm going to take that with Peter Bowles' question, I think. So Chris has said, given that the vote on the DT board on reappointing Ian McNay was split and very close, with 4 out of 9 DT board members voting against, could we please hear from DT board members on why they do or don't support the re-election? So what I'll say is I'll say why I voted in favour, and then other board members are welcome to supplement that or to contradict that as they wish. I'm not going to oblige all 10 board members to speak, but they're welcome to do so. But I suggest building on what other people have said. So the reason I voted in favour was several-fold. I've obviously served on the Don's Trust board with Ian in the past. I've served on the PLC board with Ian, and I find him a very useful member of a board because he asks the challenging questions. And actually, we do need people to ask challenging questions. The most dangerous thing is groupthink, and Ian doesn't engage in groupthink. He asks the tough questions. So that's number one. Reason number two for me is that, as Ian described it earlier, he gets what the role of the PLC board is, and that's really important until such time as it is decided to be different, that he gets that role and supports that role. And reason number three, actually, one thing about Ian, and funnily enough, he's just demonstrated that is one thing Ian is particularly good at is wheedling out of opposition club board members information we wouldn't otherwise get. And that's a really useful thing to have. So that's another reason I support Ian's vote. As I said earlier, we are going to a governance review. We might decide, you might decide that the function of the PLC board is different, and maybe that will be a time to review things. But for me, I am very happy to endorse Ian as a board member. So does anyone want to amplify that? And then if people want to say something alternatively, they are at liberty to do so.
I'm happy to come in next. So I didn't endorse the resolution here for a couple of reasons, but mainly because, as we've talked about, there is a governance review coming, and I didn't want to preempt the outcome of that. And I also think it's really important for members to decide on these things, and there has been, whether it's justified or not, a little bit of controversy in the last couple of years, and so I felt it was for members really to do that. And just as a final thing, so one of my areas is to do with governance, and actually one of the things with non-executive directors normally serve a period of time. In most organisations, they'll serve a period of time, and that's normally up to a maximum of 10 years, normally sort of 3-year terms. We don't have that at the moment, and so this is a way of ensuring that there is some kind of turnover within the board. I am currently a PLC director as well, and I find Ian chairs the meetings really, really well, and I value the external input, but it's more about the preempting and governance overall for me.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else want to?
Yeah, I also voted to basically let the membership decide rather than be guided by the Don's Trust board for 2 reasons. One was, I think it was last year, it was a year ago, wasn't it, the AGM? I wasn't actually sort of sworn in until the end of that, but that was when Ian got up and spoke, and he's just said he was misconstrued. But what I took from that as a fan and not yet a DTB member was that I took away from that you were looking to diminish the role of the Don's Trust board, and ergo, I wonder if this is kind of a turkeys voting for Christmas thing. I'm thinking, well, so I see it as a contentious appointment, and that one that I think should be left to the members without following our lead. I don't think it's a vote that we should approve or disapprove of. I think it should go to the members because they'll have taken what they took away from that AGM and what you said, and you've just clarified that. So and then I think it's over to them to go from there and make their minds up. So
Okay.
so that's why I voted not to sort of wave it through.
Okay. So does anyone else want to say anything?
Can I come in here, please, Mark? Tim Hillier.
Go for it.
I did vote to support Ian's retention of his place on the PLC board. The reason for that is that I spent many hours discussing with Ian backwards and forwards about following his consultations around the country with people like Nick Hawker at Exeter City and plenty of others, researching his position and his views both before the vote last December and subsequently. There is another point to bring here in that I agree with Mark's point that we should not all be of the same mind, that otherwise board meetings at both boards would become very one track. And we are coming into a year when there's going to be a constitutional review. So I didn't think it right to have a change around on that particular board, which has just been sort of re-establishing its useful position in the structure. But following the Imperial College review, I think it is very likely that the Constitutional Review Group that is coming up later on the agenda and to be formed next year, hopefully, that there might be some major changes, and that I think is the time when we review who is best suited to be in which positions.
Okay, thanks, Tim. So does anyone, I mean, we've got a few more questions on this. So other DTB members can say something, or we can move on to the other questions. I think you've heard of views either way. So can I just answer some of the other questions? There'll be one other question for Ian. So can Don's Trust members vote tonight if Ian stays or goes? Yes. So you are voting tonight on how we will vote, cast the trust vote tomorrow. So that is the purpose of the vote tonight, Matthew. Rob has asked, how did the PLC board fulfill its legal obligations before 18 months ago? I wasn't a member of that board much before 18 months ago, probably a couple of years, I'm not quite sure. But less formally than it does now, in the sense of that it now has periodic meetings, and you can see the minutes, redacted minutes have gone up online yesterday, I think. That was a resolution made at the SGM in resolution. So who decided that the PLC board should become an advisory board? Well, Peter, I mean, I think the answer is that the board didn't meet frequently, and actually a board has to function. And particularly we decided at the time when we were taking on several thousand new shareholders indirectly through seeders, that it was absolutely right that the board that it's advisory, but it also has functions where it has to act. If the PLC board thinks that we're trying to do something to shaft the minority investors, which we're not clearly, then the PLC directors have responsibilities to those shareholders, to all the shareholders. But for the vast majority of its time, what they're doing is they are advisory, and we and they work in quite a consensual way. But it was decided that we needed to give that enhance that board at a time when we were taking on thousands of new shareholders, and that's when meetings became more frequent. So I'll ask Ian one of the questions in a second, but I'll just go to David Hall's question first. In the event that the Dons members don't vote for Ian tonight, what will be the process for voting someone instead of him? I think the answer is, David, we don't know. The PLC directors and the Dons Trust board members, for that matter, will need to sit down and decide how big they want the board to be during the period that the governance review is going on. So I don't know. We shall see. Well, or hopefully we won't see, but that's me speaking. So Ian, there is a question from Connor, which is, what is Ian's biggest fear for the club in the next 5 to 10 years? Yeah, perhaps you could answer that. And then I think I've answered the second part of Connor's question. If the voters know what happens next, I think I've answered that. So Ian.
Well, we've moved forward incredibly well. We've gone from stage to stage, and now the stakes are much bigger insofar as we're projecting for next season, double the turnover of last season. This season will be a lower turnover, obviously, because of the whole COVID situation. And the club has got to grow in terms of the expertise. The governance review is very important, and it's vital that, in my view, there's certain changes there. The Dons Trust board should still be the key overriding board in terms of it looks after the conscience of the club, the really important things, but it needs more of a business-minded board to move forward on day-to-day, which is exactly what Exeter City has, for instance. And it's worked for them. It's taken them a few years to get to that point, but it's worked. We face so many challenges. We don't know about when COVID ends. We have to, as I said, we have to replace the loan by February 2022, the loan plus interest. So the loan is actually £4.5 million, not £4 million. We have to find by that date. It's only just over a year away. There's a lot of unknowns, and we just need experience. And the people on the Dons Trust board are great, but no one there really, maybe apart from Edward, has real business experience. And that's why I think the PLC board, or its successor, whatever that is a really important part of the role of the future of the club. I don't know if you feel I've answered the question as you would like it, but that's how I see it.
Okay, so thank you. So I'll take the final two questions, and I'm going to ask us to move to vote. We need to make progress. So resolution 6 says in favour. So we are recommending in favour of this resolution, Nigel. And Chris, who decided it? I think you probably mean who decided the advisory role of the PLC, I guess. That was a discussion, we discussed a number of times at the Dons Trust board. It's been, I can't remember formally when, etc., but we did, we have discussed on a number of times in the past that if there is a board, it has a function. It needs to exercise its function. What is its function? Well, it's primarily advisory, both to the Dons Trust board and indeed to the football club board. Okay, I'm now going to move us to a vote. So the resolution is, I think it's resolution 6, to authorise the Dons Trust board to cast the trust votes at AFCW PLC's annual general meeting in favour of re-electing Ian McNay as the director of the company. So please go for it. So Hazel, it says you have no form. So as I said earlier, if you email secretary@thedonstrust.org by 11 o'clock, saying resolution number 6 and how you want to vote on it, then David will incorporate your vote. It's strange. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so we have the provisional outcome. Yes in favour 42%, no against 47%, abstain 11%. So David, we'll need to top that one up formally pretty quickly because the AGM is tomorrow. Interesting. Thank you. Thank you for that discussion, and that was the provisional result. We shall see what the proxies do. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to the fact that it's 9:15, and I promised you a 5-minute comfort break. So shall we take a 5-minute comfort break? Thank you. This is the 1 minute warning. 1 minute warning. Okay, we'll get going in a second.
Can you hear us now, Aideen? Oh.
Okay, all right. I think, well, certainly more than 5 minutes are up. I hope people are back. So welcome back. The next item is the issue of A ordinary shares. Ed, were you back yet?
Yeah, I'm here.
So are you happy to speak to this item, or I am? What would you prefer?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm
Okay.
happy to comment. Yeah.
Oh, so well, why don't I go for it and then you can comment? Just before I do, so there was a question about can we say the absolute number of votes rather than the percentage? I'm afraid I'm just reading the outcome of the vote that is reported on the screen, but we will of course be totting all up the votes, and they will be reported as absolute numbers rather than percentages when we report that. So the next item is about the issue of A ordinary shares. So AFCW PLC is proposing to issue further A ordinary shares to complete the financing of the stadium. The background is that once Nick Robertson's money was in and the MSP capital loan finalised, we were still a little bit short and needed around £500,000 to complete the project. We knew there were a few people who hadn't yet invested and were able to come in. So we have lined up the amount we were looking for. The investment's coming from Ian McNay, some new individual investors, and a little bit of top up from the Dons Trust, Nick Robertson, and the Cedars investors. And you've heard from Edward earlier, it was about 55, I think it was, or £57,000 from right, Cedars investors. As well as those cash investments that are helping us to complete the stadium finance, we're also converting £115,000 of intercompany loans from the Dons Trust to equity, and that's something we've done quite a few times over the years. So If we could raise a bit more money, that would be good, because it would mean we'd have to borrow less money when we refinance our construction loan. So the amount of shares being approved leaves a little bit of headroom, about £250,000-ish, in case others come along wanting to buy some shares. If we were to sell the full amount of 1 million shares, the Dons Trust would still have 72.3% of the shares and 82.8% of the votes. We already have members' authorization for this, so we're not putting it to a vote this evening, but we're happy to take any questions on that. And Edward, is there anything I didn't say that I should have said?
No, and the only thing I'd add is that it really shows the worth to us of the Cedars platform. So in parallel to running a small campaign on Cedars, which has the contractual right to buy more shares when other people do, we also offered our existing minority shareholders the chance to buy more shares. And we raised around about £3,000 from direct investors, which is terrific, and about £57,000 from Cedars. So it really shows the power of the platform and of the new shareholders that we've got.
Great. So in answer to Simon's question, the Dons Trust is obliged to keep 75% of the vote rather than the shares. That's right. If we want to go below 75% of the vote, we have to come to members for a restricted action approval. And Ian has asked, on the short-term construction loan, will lenders be willing to roll over the loan for another couple of years?
We don't know. We're still drawing down the loan now, and we haven't had any conversations with them about that.
Yeah, I mean, what you wouldn't say to a construction lender is, what happens if we can't pay you back? And we, this doesn't necessarily put you in a position of strength when you talk to a lender in those terms. So we intend to refinance it. Okay, so I don't think there are any further questions on that, so we'll move on. I'd just say that there's a couple of comments in the chat thanking Ian for his loyal service over the years. I'd certainly echo that. I mean, as I said earlier, we wait for the formal count because it was very close and there are some proxies. So it would be, we will see what the formal result is, but certainly I would like, on behalf of the board and myself personally, to thank Ian for his enormous contribution over many, many years of loyal service. And Andy, there is no resolution number because this isn't an item we are voting on, because as I said earlier, the issue of equity is an issue that has previously been voted on by our members. Okay, so we're now going to move on to something that is hopefully a bit less dry than some of the resolutions this year, and it's about the museum. Before we do, so David Cox has asked, can the Dons Trust board cast its vote tomorrow without the deadline for those who didn't see a vote having passed? So the deadline is at 11 PM this evening, David. So we will have a result by hook or by crook. And so yes, if I didn't say earlier and you haven't managed to vote, then please send in your vote by 11 PM this evening. And then Peter has asked, can we make use of the loans on offer by the PL COVID package? So I don't quite know what PL means. I mean, there are various government loan schemes. There are bounce back loans.
It's the Premier League package. Maybe Tom.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I was about to go into C-bills and all that. So Joe, are you there?
Yeah.
Joe, we've been asked, can we make use of the loans on offer by the Premier League COVID package?
Yes, no. Obviously, we get a grant. going to be right for the 375, and that's for loans. Obviously, in the situation we're in at the moment, we prefer not to take any.
Can I just stop you, Joe? You're sounding like a Dalek. You are actually sounding like a Dalek.
That's my voice.
I'm assuming other people are hearing a Dalek too. Try again.
Do I sound the same now?
No. That is weird. It must be the shaving.
Try turning your video off, Joe.
Can you hear me better now?
No.
That's probably because of my children. They use the bandwidth in my house. They lock on their mobile phones.
Joe, can I suggest you log out and log in? Claudia is cracking up about this. So's Ivor. I suggest you log out and log in because it's
again
sounding really funny. I think to answer the question, the long and the short of it is there are lots of strings attached to the Premier League loan.
It's more than that, Mark. Actually, it's only for clubs that are about to go bust.
Oh, okay.
Not about to go bust. So.
All right. Thank you. So thanks for that question. Hopefully we'll see Joe back in a second, sounding a bit less like a Dalek. Okay, I am going to move on. Just done and done. Okay, so the next thing is the museum. So we've previously discussed with you the proposal to have a museum in the new stadium. We updated you last year on the discussions we were having with Wimbledon and Sporting History, also known as WISH. In a moment, I'll ask Tim Hillier, who's both a Dons Trust board member and one of the trustees of WISH, to present to you a bit about WISH, but I'll just say a few words first. We think having a museum in the stadium is desirable. Hopefully it'll be of interest to our fans and to the wider public in Merton and bring people in to look at our stadium. We think WISH have the energy, enthusiasm and knowledge to make such a project work. The people behind WISH also have a lot of artifacts that they're able to bring into WISH and deploy in the museum. Given the other demands upon us, the Dons Trust Board doesn't directly, or at least hasn't hitherto, have what it takes to make a go of that project by ourselves. So clearly we can't just say, well, there's a room for a museum, do what you want with it, even though, having identified a party. So there will be an agreement between AFC Wimbledon, the Dons Trust and WISH, setting out how we'll work together. We have an outline of that agreement, but it'll need to be turned into a formal contract once we have your approval to proceed. But doing that involves spending money on legal costs, etc. And so we're not waiting to get to the end of that process to come to you for approval. You may remember that some members presented a resolution to an SGM in April 2019 and had some concerns. We had a meeting with Sean Fox and his colleagues and WISH over the summer, and we took account of a number of the points they raised in structuring the arrangements. I'm not going to tell you we've satisfied every single one of them on all their points. I'm not going to say it was a lengthy process of dialogue. We had a meeting. I found it constructive. I expect Sean and all colleagues may want to comment on that at some point this evening. They may feel differently, but I won't put words in their mouth. But before we turn to them or to other questions, I want to ask Tim to say a few words about WISH and its proposals. Tim, are you there?
I am, thank you, Mark. And I'm going to start really by thanking all those involved in the process so far. And that's especially those who've had queries and concerns, because it is only by being challenged and analysing things that perhaps we'd taken for granted but hadn't appreciated the implications, that we, in consultation with the club, with the trust, with the foundation, have evolved our thinking. And here I better declare my interest as the trustee of WISH. But I am not a collector. I don't have a huge archive of programmes, badges, etc., etc. What I can bring is knowledge of the charity sector and having worked in an archive, in fact it was a library for a number of years, I have some experience on how to assemble a collection and display to best effect those items for the enjoyment of the wider membership and indeed the wider fan group and our community. So my wishes and thanks go to Mark in particular from the Trust Board, but also all my Don's Trust Board colleagues, to Joe from the football club and all of his colleagues, Philip from the foundation. We had very constructive conversation because speaking for Wish here, we don't want to tread on anyone's toes. We want to present a museum staffed by volunteers, filled with donations and loans from the collectors to best effect, and at zero cost to the club. We obviously appreciate the way finances are, and we have a great opportunity as well in that the room is superb. It's beyond our expectations. For those who haven't seen the layout of the stadium, it will be accessed via the club shop, which will be no surprise to anyone who goes to museums or galleries, where you always find that the shop is close to the entrance, both while assembling for your, in this case, a stadium tour, and on the way out for your gifts and mementos. So we're well down the track, with thanks again to all those involved, and a lot has evolved in the course of the last 12, 18 months. And we hope that we're nearly there. I in fact drafted some heads of terms, and again those have been picked apart and revised as we've gone through, and really we're coming to you, the membership, for rubber stamping this so that we can move on to the next stage. There will be, in the light of where we've got to now, we will be going back to the Charity Commission to enhance the status of our constitution and our standing with the Charity Commission, because we're a bigger organisation now than we were at the start. We've assembled a fantastic group of volunteers, and I don't know if George is able to introduce the slides of the PowerPoint, and I can start running through those. It's paper 7 on the agenda.
So Tim, I don't think, I might be wrong, but I don't think we've lined up that presentation slides, but people will have them in their pack. So are you okay to talk to them, Tim?
Absolutely. So very briefly, it's only 6 pages, so we assembled this for easy digestion. The first page just explains that Wish is for sport in Wimbledon, but obviously because we're a football stadium, we're going to make use of that stadium to display the collection that needs a bigger space. In fact, some of us went down to Exeter City to see how they've used all the walls and spaces within their stadium to display to great effect, and I'd recommend anyone who finds their way down to the West Country to pop in there. Then we moved on to a history of how this has evolved. In fact, the name Wish was devised almost 10 years ago, and that provoked what you might have seen, a film that was shown at the Odeon in Wimbledon called Common Ground, which explained why Wimbledon as a town became such a centre of sporting innovation. So obviously there's the tennis, and they've got an awesomely good museum if anyone finds their way down there. And we would want our museum to be just as good, and perhaps an alternative venue for the tourist market, if nothing else, and certainly to visitors to the stadium, away fans, and anyone who wants to come and have a look to understand our story. And as many people have said, it is the story that is unique about AFC Wimbledon. So the structure has come about, and as I said earlier, it's evolved so that with the help of everyone I mentioned earlier, we now think we're getting very close to a structure that works, and the recruitment is well underway. As far as meshing with our volunteers with the club, Joe in particular has helped us so that we will not be setting our own admission prices. That will be done in consultation. Junior dons will have free access, as will the schools in the borough. We will also mesh in with the stadium tours, so that it will be a complete package. But of course, the treasures that we have collected and showing the film and other rolling exhibitions on top of a permanent display, that will be done in consultation with the club. And we will, as volunteers, sign up to a volunteer agreement that you won't be surprised to hear is very similar indeed to the volunteer agreement that all AFC Wimbledon and Don's Trust volunteers sign up. So our aims is to use the museum as a hub. Everything that we either collect ourselves or receive as donations or is loaned to us will go onto an inventory. Nothing will go into the museum that isn't absolutely tracked, so that we know who it belongs to, where it's come from, what it is. So it's fully identified, and we're building that inventory already. We're going to continue our relationships with the club and the trust, including fixed reporting periods, so that everyone can see transparently what our finances are, what our objectives are, and how we're progressing towards our aims. And we will, a slight change here, we will be integrating with other sports in a very constructive way. In particular, so far already, we've got Speedway and the Greyhounds who have offered to donate or lend some of their artifacts and actually pay for their installation in an appropriate place within the stadium. So again, at no cost, we will recognise the site for its sporting heritage. And we've also got lined up, Honorary Life President is Maureen Batsford. Dickie Guy has agreed to be our Vice President, and we've got ambassadors from football and other sports. And we will build into this an educational arm. We often get approached as a club and as a trust for people who want to do sort of deeper research into our club's heritage and the wider sporting heritage in the borough. And we want to be fully involved in that. Our archives are incredibly diverse, and as well as doing the work ourselves to build that inventory, we want to open them up to anyone who wants to study those resources. Thank you very much, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Tim. So we've got a few questions. One or two of them might be for me, one or two of them might be for you, but is the museum going to wash its face, or will it lose money? Are you good to do that, Tim?
Indeed, it's a great question. Of course, it has to pay its way. The rent will be peppercorn because we are working with the club, so we're providing a service. So we would expect that basic provision in terms of heat and light will also be provided. But when it comes to things that are uniquely attributable to the museum, which are ongoing costs, sort of printing of flyers and above all the insurance for those items that are on display, and also those that will, because of lack of space, will have to be stored off-site. So the insurance will have to come out of our proceeds. But yes, we're very close to agreeing the share of income with the club, because there are some things where the club will be committing resources such as booking stadium tours and so forth. So yes, indeed, we will have to wash our face financially.
So given the stated aim to set up a charitable incorporated organisation, could Wish or Tim explain why a limited company called Wimbledon Sporting History was formed on the 4th of November this year, and why was it formed? Yeah,
this comes about because of the way that actually most charities are set up, which is that the charity charities more widely own assets. And amongst those assets, they own companies, and the companies are there to trade. It's almost precautionary, and it may indeed be dormant for some time. But if we, for instance, have licenses to video footage, or indeed to historic items that are copyright or patented, then there might be an opportunity at some place down the track to exploit the ownership of those assets. So at the moment there is no income, and there are no outgoings to set against that, but at some stage it might be useful to do so.
Okay, so Wish previously said they had an alternative venue lined up in case we decided not to partner with them. Is that still the case?
At the moment, our alternative venue was focused because of our lack of storage space. So we have actually found a storage space that we've achieved at minimal cost. Subject to negotiation, yes, we have several ideas, but we haven't pursued them as yet.
So Colette has asked, why isn't Wish operating under the auspices of the trust rather than yet another company? It's probably a combination of me and Tim on this, I guess. I mean, it's worth noting that the AFC Wimbledon Foundation is an independent organisation too, because it's a charity, and the Dons Trust isn't a charity. So one reason is that to get charitable status, and Tim, step in if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Wish didn't wish to operate, no pun intended, under the auspices of the Dons Trust, and they have some substantial assets in their own right that a lot of money have gone into collecting, and they wanted it to be remote from an organisation that owns a club that owes people many millions of pounds. So I think that was one factor too. Is there Tim, anything else to say on that?
Well, that is a case in point, and I'll name names here. One is that Charlton Athletic are beholden to their club, even in terms of access to their assets. That they've stored their museum in the upper reaches of the valley, and sometimes they can't even go and search through their own archives because they've lost control of it. So it's from the wishes of several of our collectors that they wanted to maintain that separate nature, but whilst wanting to share their collections with a much wider audience. So it's with respect to those collectors who we perceived quite early on would step away if we didn't keep ourselves at arm's length from the trust and the club.
Okay, thank you. And but it is worth reminding that the Dons Trust will have a nominee on the Wish trustees, and does in the form of Tim. So Lou's asked prices. I thought any museum would be free. I think I'm right in saying that it's for the club to set pricing under the heads of terms, if any. Can you remember the answer to that, Tim?
Yes, it is for the club. The conversation had moved on significantly, although I've not sat in on those. In that the big opportunity we see is for stadium tours, where the junior dons and local schools and educational bodies, it would be free. Whereas for groups and individuals who come along wanting a tour of the stadium, that would be chargeable, and we see those as intrinsically linked, and that's normally the case at other places. I don't think the museum itself standalone would be an attraction for tourists or even for our own fans, although we're going to try and keep it really lively by rotating displays. But a stadium tour is a much bigger draw, and we think that just a modicum of advertising and spreading the word that we could get substantial numbers in, certainly in the early years, and perhaps dependent on the success of the club ongoing.
Okay, great question from Nigel. What does success look like for Wish at Plough Lane?
Well, again, coming from the charity arm of museums and galleries and libraries, a lot of it, of the KPIs, if you like, that's key performance indicators, are in terms of visitor numbers, engagement. So it will be website hits, length of time on the website, number of people visiting the museum, number of sign-ups for tours, and attributable sales in the shop, because the spin-off here is with merchandise and allied shop sales.
Okay, I'll just save your voice. I'll answer the next one. How much space does the museum take up and what are the alternative uses for that space? 40 square meters, no alternative use specifically identified, Adam. So Lee Willett has asked, does the agreement with franchise over the history stop us legally from displaying anything prior to 28th May 2002 in the museum?
Brilliant question, Lee. Thank you for this. It'll help me to acknowledge the input of WISA, and in particular Ross McLachlan and Simon Wheeler, who negotiated the Accord, as it's known, and also the Football Supporters Federation, who helped broker the deal. There is a clause in the Accord which brilliantly says that we can display artefacts in the borough of Merton. So that is how there is a cabinet in the library at Crown House in Morden, but that we weren't able to borrow those items that are currently on show to put in a cabinet at Kingsmeadow. Happily, because Plough Lane is in the borough of Merton, we can borrow those items from Merton to display within our museum. And Sarah Gould, Merton Heritage, has already indicated that she's happy to enable that, and that relationship with Merton Council via Merton Heritage will be ongoing. We help them out a lot, and in fact, a couple of years ago we had a superb day at Crown House during the Heritage Day, so that relationship is ongoing. Thanks, Lee.
Okay, so another great question from Nigel: is there a timeline for this meeting? I am conscious that things, we said we'd try and get people done by 9:30 or 10, and we do want to have time for Q&A. So I'm suggesting that we bring this item to a conclusion at 9:30, if that's okay with people. That's not because I want to truncate discussion. I'm just conscious that, particularly an online meeting, people have limited attention spans. So Roger has asked, I'm in favour for an experience that tells our story and potential others that broaden appeal and support outreach. Who has done the key work that such a project needs? Type of attraction options, interpretation, storytelling, visitor forecasting, business planning, structure, operating model, partnerships.
Absolutely brilliant question, Roger, and you're thinking the same way that we are. So please, if you have any spare time and your own personal resources to bring to the project, you'd be most welcome. Particularly, I am a massive fan of telling stories, because I think we need to move away from dry cabinets and items behind glass, and get people who can engage by their own experiences and by their skills to pass on through the generations and to the wider community just what our football club means to us and how important it is in the story of football. So yeah, please come on board, and thank you very much for stepping forward.
Okay, so who will own any artifacts? Will it be the charity or the limited company? Sean has asked.
Great question, Sean, and it is absolutely the charity. Let there be no doubt whatsoever. The limited company is only there for trading.
So I might take the next one, Barry. Would it not be sensible, to consider this in a few years once we paid back our current loans? I mean, I think from the trust perspective, Barry, so the museum is not going to be a cash drain. It's not costing us or the club money. Wish will be able, first of all, Wish will be able to access, once it's got a charity established, it will be able to access grant funding for various things that the trust or club couldn't necessarily be eligible for. And secondly, hopefully it will bring people into the stadium who wouldn't otherwise come, and they'll come and look at the shop and go to the pub maybe, and things like that. So I don't see that there's a contradiction between operating a museum and paying back our loans. I don't know if anyone, Tim, there's anything to add to that from your perspective.
No, I think you've covered it superbly. Thanks, Mark.
So what are the immediate and long-term financial and other implications for the Dons Trust if the agreement is approved? Well, I don't think there are significant financial implications for the Dons Trust, but for the reasons I just said, the Dons Trust isn't committing money to this. Wish will fund itself and wash its face. Other implications, well, I think that, so as I mentioned, there will be a nominee from the Dons Trust on the Foundation Trust Board in exactly the same way as actually we have nominees on the Foundation Trust Board. It is intended to improve those linkages by inviting representatives along 2 periodic Dons Trust Board meetings, so the linkages can be there. But I don't think there are specific implications, John, at least in the way I interpret what you're saying. So I think that answers that one. I hope I have. Are you seeking COVID funds from the money the National Archives are distributing? Wow, what a question. Do you have any idea, Tim?
Well, the answer is no, as far as I'm aware, and I do have most of the financial responsibility at the moment. We're not in a position to go seeking funds. We have, though, had some generous donations of equipment, and we'll be looking for more.
So, Rob, if Wish has secured donations by claiming that they are partnered with the Trust and the Club at a time they are not, will they be contacting the people who donated those items to offer to return them?
Well, can I come in here, Mark? I'm not aware of any such items. If anyone should think that there's been any disingenuous behaviour or misunderstandings, then of course they're welcome to contact us. We'll try and clarify the situation, and if someone wishes for their items to be returned, of course that will be the case, because we've no wish to have misled anyone.
So Sean has asked, items that are donated by supporters subsequently, will they be owned by Wish or the Trust? Will this be made clear to those donating, and can they choose to give them to the Trust?
Well, we have a form which is for loans or donations, so it's got tick boxes to make that clear, and we will keep a register, and if the Trust so wish, we will take extra copies, and the Trust can hold a copy. If I don't know how the Trust stands on this, whether they would accept donations and whether they would wish to hold those, because if the Trust loaned or donated to Wish, then that would be acknowledged. It's up to the donor, quite frankly.
Okay, and I don't think the Trust has a settled position on accepting gifts and loaning them to the museum. Maybe, you know, it hasn't been specifically considered. I suspect that it doesn't probably, you know, if we had a real energy and enthusiasm to date to do that, we might have done what somebody suggested earlier and set such a thing up ourselves. So but you know, that's for the incoming board to decide what appetite they have. So I'm going to go as quickly as we can through as many as we can by 1:30, and I'm not trying to truncate it. I just want to be fair to the rest of the agenda. David, how much of the Wish archive is owned by Wish and how much in private hands?
Well, the Wish archive is entirely owned by Wish, and we haven't yet accepted in donations from private hands other than a few small donations. So it's the majority from which we've acquired from the limited funds we've had at our disposal so far.
So Roger has asked, how many people will visit the museum and stadium tours per annum?
Can I come back to you, Roger? I think that's something that has been worked on in consultation with the club, in perhaps for financial modelling. So I frankly don't know, but I can come back to you on that.
Thank you. So, Mark, Tim isn't the DT's representative, is he, on Wish? I'm not sure if you were suggesting that he is just then. I think that is the case, Chris. Yes, it doesn't always have to be the case, and the so what Tim isn't doing, if maybe this is your question, is Tim isn't negotiating the agreement between the trust and Wish, and so I've been the trust person recently on that, but yes, in effect, he is the link between the trust and Wish at the moment for ongoing purposes. But that is something for the incoming board to decide roles and responsibilities for the year ahead. Nigel, thanks for that response. Would it be worthwhile having a trial period when those KPIs can be captured?
Yeah, good point, Nigel, and absolutely, yeah, we will have to measure it, assess it against targets, and then reevaluate.
So, great question from Donald. Will there be access in the museum for wheelchairs, etc., for disabled people?
Well, I would adamantly hope so. There should be nowhere in that stadium that is not DDA accessible.
So Jill has said, this is bigger than the museum. This is about safeguarding our memorabilia and history. Who will ultimately own any memorabilia donated to Wish? And are guarantees in place to ensure nothing donated will be sold or given away?
Well, if items are donated to Wish, then they belong to Wish. So make that clear. I'm not in a position to say there would be no sales or exchanges or other negotiations going on. All I can say is that we'll be transparent about anything that happens. It is quite likely, and this happens with libraries, for instance, that you get, say, surplus books, and you keep the best examples and you sell off the surplus. That is fairly standard practice, I would say.
Okay.
Right. And that is the case with program donations and that sort of thing.
Okay, we're going to move on in a second. So I'll just very quickly get to the bottom of these. Barry, personally think it should be totally self-funded. That is the intention. Adam, we spending a decent amount of time with the club's trust energy to develop this proposal, but little evidence time on strategy review, etc. I'll answer that. I mean, in a sense, it is for the new board to set their priorities for the year ahead. I'm sure the strategy will be right up there. I mean, actually, one of the reasons that we've spent less time on consultations, etc., on this, is because other things have been higher up our to-do list than this. But this needn't be hugely time-consuming for the trust in the same way that actually the foundation isn't hugely time-consuming. Can we move on? Yes, we're about to. Who are the directors of Wish Limited? I don't know, but that's not who the trust and club will have the relationship with. It'll be the CIO. Is there reason?
And Mark, that's a matter of public record as well. Can easily look that up.
Is there a reason that the trustee model was chosen rather than the one that allows a membership that elects trustees? Well, both models exist. Sean, can the DT enforce their trustee on Wish? So yeah, we can say we nominate Fred Bloggs, and there is a dispute mechanism. And I think it goes to the first point that actually there will be mechanisms, I'm sure, to involve people in what Wish does, but actually the way that our fans get involved is via the trust primarily. Gary, the shop and truck museum will be next to each other, and John Lynch has just confirmed that the museum will be fully disability discrimination access. That may or may not be the right what it stands for, compliant, and also meet the recommendations of LPF level playing field and the plans. So I'm going to move us to a vote now. I know we truncated that a little bit, but we've got stuff to get to. So thank you, Tim, and you're going to hear more from Tim in a second. we're going to go to the resolution now, which is resolution 7, to authorise the Dons Trust Board to enter into agreement with Wimbledon Sporting History Wish, so that Wish can proceed to install and operate a museum commemorating the club's history within the new stadium. Okay, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, stop. So 76% in favour, 16% against, abstain 7%. So thank you very much. That's great. We shall move on. So Tim, I'm sorry, you're not out of the frame yet. The next thing is the update on Resolution 11A from September SGM. So this is paper 8, which provides an update on the proposed timing of updating the Society's constitution to include a new restricted action in relation to disposal of AFC Wimbledon Stadium at Plough Lane. Tim, do you just want to present your paper?
Thank you. I'll be very brief on this, Mark. So this is a response to a motion at September's SGM, which was very timely because it's an action that carries on from my manifesto and from unfinished work from when I had previously been on the board, when we had started a constitutional review, but then had to put a hold on it because the overarching topic on the table was the new stadium. So now that the new stadium is open and unfortunately not trading with all of us present, but nonetheless it is time that the Dons Trust reviews its constitution, which is, to be quite frank, hopelessly out of date and is verging on not fit for purpose. It's not quite that bad, but it's getting that way. So we're several iterations behind the times in terms of the law of the land and what a good constitution for a supporter-owned club should look like. And in fact, our current constitution was not even written for a supporter-owned club. It was written for a trust that has a small shareholding potentially or no shareholding in the club, and therefore wasn't even written with its current needs in mind. So I've put my hand up and my colleagues on the board agreed that I should lead on this. So I've drafted this with a timetable which might seem ambitious, but I think it's achievable, that by this time next year we will have worked our way through drafts and iterations of a new constitution. I'm going to seek the help of the Football Supporters Association, which is the successor to Supporters Direct, and try and find as much as possible pro bono legal advice so that we can go through this process at minimal cost. But the overarching need is, even if it costs us a little bit of money, it will be well worth the expenditure to get ourselves a constitution that's fit for the Dons Trust to continue its ownership and operation of the football club and the stadium. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much. So you'll all be relieved to hear you're going to get a break from my voice because we're going to have Q&A now, and Jane is going to compare that. Jane, are you there?
Evening, everybody. Really nice to see over 200 people here this evening. Thanks for bearing with us to all the procedural stuff. We're going to just take some general questions and answers. So again, if you use the Q&A facility, please, within the Zoom function, and I'll basically be just passing the questions out to various board members, along with colleagues from the Football Club Board, to take. And we will cover various topics, including sort of stadium, ticketing, football, commercial, D&I, membership, financial, anything really that's on your mind at the moment. And I'll try to theme those questions as we go. So we might clump some together if there's several that look the same within the Q&A function. But first, before inviting questions, we wanted to give you an update on the opportunity with London Broncos that you will have all seen and read about recently. You may have seen the updated message on the Trust website earlier today. And so I'm going to immediately hand over to Luke, who can just update you and explain the background and timing of the temperature check, and then to Joe to give you a bit of an update on the proposal. Luke, can you come in on that one?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jane. So thank you to everybody who replied to the survey or the temperature test, in inverted commas. There's no getting away from the fact it was rushed out. I got a phone call from Joe on Saturday morning. The Super League had brought forward their vote to Monday, and it was looking highly likely that Sky Sports or another media organisation were going to leak it almost as a done deal that London Broncos were going to be playing at Plough Lane. Quite clearly that wasn't the case. No deal's been done. We were in talks back in the summer, and Joe had a good few conversations with him. To the point we got to a heads of term agreement with London Broncos, and that was shared with the Don's Trust Board. The heads of term agreement clearly stated within it that we wouldn't go ahead with any deal until we'd had a full consultation with our membership, which is what our intention was to do, and obviously still is to do, as we've made clear today, hopefully. So that should put that one to bed. By rushing out the information that we sent out, some of the Q&As, there was obviously a bit of alarm around the question, stating that we wouldn't necessarily take it to a formal vote due to the timings. That was probably a mistake to put that in there, and I hold my hands up to that one. That was almost trying to be as honest as we could be and as transparent as we could be, because there was a slight fear that if London Broncos were put into the Super League, things might move so quickly that they would have needed to confirm the ground share. Now we still have to go through planning, and Joe will explain a bit of that process. And that's actually bought us a bit more time, which we weren't sure we were going to have. So that's fantastic. And that means we can do a full kind of consultation and a chat through. Just to give you a bit of headline figures, the vote doesn't, or the temperature test doesn't actually finish till Friday. It was literally just an idea just to see what people's thoughts were with the basic level of information that we gave you. And it's around 78, 79% are in favour of a ground share based on the information they've been given. So for my mind, that's great, and that means we can move forward. I think if it had been 80% the other way and 80% didn't want a ground share based on the information given, then we'd probably almost knock it on the head at that point. But I sort of see the temperature test as permission to move on and share a bit more information with you guys, and sort of as much as we can, and then get a formal kind of vote going so that we can all have a say. And that's where we're at. That's why it was so quick and so rushed. We just wanted to get the information out to you guys, and our kind of hands are a bit tied behind our back with the timings. So yeah, and I'll pass over to Joe because he's going to explain a bit more about the deal, and also some of the good things, I guess, in terms of some of the questions we've had that he can answer right now for you.
Yeah, so hopefully I don't sound like a Dalek. I've just obviously been busy regenerating from the previous Doctor Who, but hopefully I'm back on board now. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you. Oh, good evening, everyone, and thank you for that, Luke. Yeah, absolutely, nailed it really in terms of the process of the last week. It was pretty hectic over the weekend. Was not exactly what I was hoping to hear, that something like that might leak out. So it obviously wasn't the best situation to be in. But yeah, let me try and give you a bit more of a background to it all. First and foremost, I think what I want to say is actually that I am not desperate, and we are not desperate to have a ground share. We would only ever take a ground share if it made financial sense and it was a good opportunity for us. That's the first and foremost thing. We're not doing this just because it's the first opportunity that's come along. We've had several approaches from different clubs, from different sports. And it was just this one that came to us in the summer. And bearing in mind that at the time, there was no hint of Super League for London Broncos. It was very much about them being in the Championship, and they wanted the move to potentially Plough Lane as an opportunity for them to get into the Super League and to grow and become a big, a big force in rugby league. And that's what's excited them about being in Wimbledon. They are absolutely, they're chomping at the bit to be in Wimbledon with us. So again, the deal at the time, and obviously the heads of terms, was always based on the Championship, the fact that they already have quite low attendances where they are in Ealing. So we always based our modelling on that sort of worst case scenario, if you like. And even in that worst case scenario, it had to be still worthwhile for us. And that was the key bottom line in this. Everything else would be upside. So when we did went through the heads of terms, we went backwards and forwards, and actually we created a deal that actually, again, has a big impact. It's a significant impact on our operating ability to operate at another level and the income that it covers. So we were very much, thought this is something that we can move forward with. We, sort of started to lay out the ground rules and what would have to happen. We obviously, as Luke said, we made very clear that first and foremost, we'd have to get the agreement from the fans, but there were still a number of other steps even aside of that. We would still have to go through a planning change, because at the moment the stadium is only allowed to have football. We would also have to get agreement from our neighbours, Galliards. So there was quite a few hoops to jump through before we'd be in a position to move forward, and that is still the case. So it's absolutely by no means any sort of done deal. We are just sort of working through the process. What happened then was obviously with COVID really hit, and many of you will have seen in the news what had happened with rugby league. It wasn't certain what was going to happen, whether they were even going to have a season next year. So it just dropped off the radar really, and we sort of continued. I had plenty to get on with. And we sort of continued with the stadium build throughout the summer. And then literally, I think it was probably just about a month ago, if that, probably less than that, they sort of came back and said, things have changed. We've had investment into the rugby league. There is going to be a season next season, and there is a potential that we might be in the Super League. So at that point, we sort of brought it back up again. I had discussions with Luke. We talked about drafted a consultation, what that might look like, and then obviously we got to the point where suddenly I got this call on a Saturday morning explaining this. So we had to sort of rush through it, and that absolutely was not our intention. We wanted to have a good discussion about not just ground sharing for rugby league, but also to get your opinions on ground sharing with other sports as well, because we realised we hadn't discussed that, and if for any reason London Broncos didn't work out, we wanted to know what position we were in with fans in relation to how they felt about ground sharing with other sporting organisations. So, that is where we wanted to be. Now, I'm just sort of going through some of the things that I've seen in terms of people's concerns about ground sharing. I think I'll start with the one about branding. There are different types of ground share. There are ground shares where, for example, at Brentford and London Irish. So London Irish will have invested considerable amount of capital into the stadium and its infrastructure. They have a shared ticket office. They have branding up on the stadium. It's a completely different model. We're looking very much at an extended ground share model, similar to what we would have had with QPR, where they are just using the ground. The branding, there is nothing permanent. It would all be on LEDs, on TV screens, concourse screens, and also on signage, which is reversible, a bit like the signs that we had within the President's Lounge, you may remember, that could be swapped out with Chelsea images and our images. So when you would come in on a match day, you would not see anything to do with London Broncos. And that's really key. You know, we knew that this was a new stadium. It's a new stadium for us, and the last thing we wanted to do was have it feel like it was somebody else's. So that absolutely is not an issue. The next one in regards to the pitch, well, the pitch is a hybrid pitch. We always designed the stadium to be future-proofed for rugby. The changing rooms were oversized. The runoffs on the side of the pitch were enough for international regulations for rugby. So there was always the view that we wanted to have a stadium that was capable of hosting multi-sports, and we knew we would have to go through planning at some point for that. So it was always on our radar, whether that was proper ground sharing or if it was even just a one-off international game that we might be able to have, or exhibition matches for other sports. It's just something that we know could add to, you know, our income as a club, being able to host other sports. So that was always the intention of the stadium, that we would have that opportunity and wanted to explore it. So ultimately, the pitch being hybrid absolutely can take the load. You're talking only 13 games with rugby league. Also, those the games, those 13 games run throughout mainly the summer. So there are times when we're not playing on it at the same time. There's questions obviously about, yes, the pitch does need a period of renovation during the summer. So rugby league is very used to that. And what they'll typically do is they will schedule the games either at the beginning or the end of the season, so that we have a period in the summer when we can make those pitch renovations. But yeah, there's no issue with that. One issue in terms of the line markings, that was my first question, because I absolutely detest green paint. So don't worry about that. I really would not stand for that. One of the things we've been looking at is there are the new line marking technology where it's basically washable. It's the paint that washes off very, very easily. So I think that shouldn't be an issue for us, and certainly something that I'm looking at. And obviously, it's a cost that would be incurred by the London Broncos. We would also, in addition to the deal that we have, it would also involve a shared maintenance fee of the pitch as well on top of that. So again, you know, it's benefiting us even more. Now, obviously, the difficult one with you guys, I know everyone wants to know how much it is. It's a confidential question. We have to respect the privacy of London Broncos on this one, but I do want to give you an indication. Obviously, when I say significant, you don't know what I mean. I wish you could, but let me say that aside from ticketing, the income from the London Broncos, in the scenario that they get into the Super League, would be one of the most significant income streams that we have in the club. It would be capable of covering potentially both our loan on our debt, as well as the interest on the bond. So it is a significant number. Now, even at its lowest number, it would absolutely cover the interest on the bond and make a good dent into the loan. And for those of you who are quite sharp-eyed, I could say that it's probably half the revenue of our previous commercial budget. So it's significant enough to make a difference, and I believe to go into a ground sharing situation. Yeah.
Right.
I hope that's answered some of those questions.
Thanks, Joe. I'm quite conscious of time. It's sort of 5 to 10 now, coming up 5 to 10. We did say we'd be finished by 10. We've got quite a number of questions, and I don't want to just cut people off. So we will carry on with the questions, but please don't feel that you have to stay. There's no more formal business to be done. We'll probably go until about 10:15 just to try and get through some of the questions. but as I say, there's no formal business, so it's entirely up to you when you drop off. Please don't feel you have to stay and partake if you need to go. That's absolutely fine. Joe, there was a couple of other things I think around Broncos. You might have covered them.
Yeah, I've picked up one from Lee, which I meant to say.
The Broncos or whoever, please can someone confirm?
Yes, yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So thanks for reminding me of that one. Absolutely not. No, they are absolutely adamant that they do not want to have their crowds in there before we do. They understand how much that means to the fans, and actually, you know, they were monitoring Twitter as well, so they got to understand a lot of the issues, and they're very keen for our fans to sort of take them into their hearts as well, and absolutely, they said, you know, even because ultimately they are governed by the same rules that we will be in terms of allowances and crowds back into the stadium. So it would be the same time. But even if they were to have a match that happened to be scheduled before one of our home games, they absolutely would not play that game. They would let us play in there first. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I just dropped out of connection for a second.
Okay.
Apologies. There's a question from Arvin which covers various bits of the Broncos deal or the discussion. Local area residents view the deal or view.
I have no. We won't know until we go into the planning stage. But I think what I want to say about the planning stage is that even regardless of whether the Broncos deal goes ahead or not, it's something that we want to do. We want to have planning to be able to play rugby at the stadium. A bit like down the line, we want to have the ability to have concerts at the stadium. And in that case, we will have to go through a planning variation in order to be able to do that. So these are things that we want to do down the line.
Thanks, Joe. There's a couple of others. There's are the Broncos considering a stadium in the area during the interim agreement?
No. So I mean, so it's interesting. It's very tight, obviously. Arvin, as you've probably considered, they want to start as soon as the season starts. So their season will start at the end of March. Even if we were flat out with the planning process and it got through, you know, that probably wouldn't happen until probably the middle to beginning of March. So it'd be very tight for them, and they would ultimately have to play elsewhere or play games away. I would have thought. So as I know, I don't know if they've got another stadium that they were thinking of in the interim. I can't answer that one. And how many attendees do we expect per game given their league status and current stadium capacity? Their average last season was 2,000, and their feeling is moving. You know, they're in a really poor stadium at the moment. Their feeling is that the move would see a boost as well. So they would be hoping for sort of the 3 to 3.5 at least. But you know, needless to say, we have modelled, you know, basically pessimistic, average, and optimistic models for both the Championship and for Super League. And even in the worst, as I said, the worst scenario, we're comfortable with where the numbers are for us. Where we are considering they're working their way around the internal stuff. That's not for me to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some I think that need to go to them rather than us.
Yeah.
Then there are something from Peter Lang. What other clubs and sports have approached the club expressing?
I can't. I'm not going. I obviously can't give away the names of them, but we've had obviously previously a rugby club and also football.
Thank you. And I think you've answered this already, but I just want to be really clear on it. Will Broncos branding be on the front?
No, not at all. No. The only place you'll see it will be on the big screen. So we have a large screen that will be at the entranceway onto the stadium. and on their match day they will simply put their digital logo up on it. You know, that's it.
And then I'm just trying to go through the ones that are the Broncos related, and then we'll move on. We'll just take a couple more on Broncos and then move on. Sorry if I missed it, but what would the arrangements with London Broncos in terms of bar takings and gate receipts be?
Again, that's confidential detail in terms of the deal, but needless to say, there are more. We are not just simply taking a rental fee. There are a number of revenue share elements to the deal as well.
And then, will two clubs in the same area, in the same area after the same market affect any potential sponsorship deals?
No, I don't believe so at all. No, I think it will actually have a positive impact. I think there's opportunities to share sponsors that want to target both audiences. So no, I don't see that as a negative at all.
And then just one more on Broncos. And what we'll do is we'll put all these questions together we haven't got, and we'll try and get some answers for you. Keeps jumping around as more people are putting in questions. I just saw one. What was it? Would that? Oh, I think this is a reply to something. Would that be London Bronco fans viewing before all fans were let in, or just the non-refundable season ticket holders, assuming fans are not letting in their entirety at that point? I think this was in response to your would.
Well, just it's difficult to say where we're going to be at that point. You know, who knows? That's not what I'll be able to answer right now. It would be the maximum that we can let in.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to another couple of questions, sort of stadium ground related. Can you update us on the test events at the new ground, please?
I would have been able to, but obviously sort of tier 3 has now potentially knocked that out of the park, unfortunately. We don't know exactly what we're looking at now. You know, if anybody has any better insight into how long this is likely to be, I'd be very grateful. We, as I said, we were ultimately looking to try and have a sort of first test event kind of mid-January time. As I said, we are working on the protocols at the moment. We've actually done all our calculations now. We had a SAG meeting earlier in the week where we presented them with a document outlining our general approach to crowds in the new ground. So that sort of broke down what our capacities would be, what our concourse capacities would be, what our flow rates, what our egress and ingress routes would be, how we would keep people divided and move them in and out of the stadium safely. That has gone over to them for review. We hope to get that review back in the new year with some comments, and when we can start to pull together the full protocol document. However, we have we've got some updates in terms of the stadium readiness. We've had, as you know, many of you know, we've had some delays with the gas fitting, which has delayed some other elements. The stadium is really close to finishing. We were sat in our office today, you know, it's all done and ready for us to work in. The second floor, all the rooms are ready. The large event space is practically finished. It will all be stadium tidy up, snagging, testing and commissioning, and that process is going to probably take us on throughout January anyway. So at the moment it's not totally clear. It's not as clear as we thought it was earlier in December, but needless to say, it's, you know, we're in that sort of final phase. It's just really, you know, the cleanup. It's a very messy site. Everything needs to be wiped down and swept up, and that will take some time. But yeah, you know, don't worry. The building works are moving fine. They are almost completed. I would expect within a week or two of coming back in January, there will be no more actual construction works needed. It's just commissioning and testing and clean up.
And the goalposts keep moving on when we can't have people there. So, which sort of leaves us, how will you decide who goes to the test events when that finally happens? From Karen A.
Yes, we're going to come out with that process as well. I mean, a lot of it has been explained anyway earlier when we did the debenture round, how the priority system would work. But we will come out with a reminder for everyone. We'll post that.
And are we having digital advertising boards around the pitch?
We are indeed. They were just installed on Tuesday. They look beautiful. The large screen was cranked up for the first time this week as well, and that looked beautiful too. So yes, it looks very, very nice, very professional, very dynamic, and I'm very excited about having them and the opportunities it has for us.
Question from Rob Crane. Joe implied that construction has nearly finished, but how is fitting out progressing?
So we've actually got the rooms are actually filled. Some of the rooms are full with furniture. So a lot of the furniture and fittings and fixtures are already there. We just need them to sort of finish their snagging and the final sweep ups in the rooms so that we can start to lay all the furniture out and do my best Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen and style the place.
Lots of paint in pots somewhere.
Yes.
Moving on slightly from direct questions on the stadium, so still related to the stadium, but rather than build, can you tell us any more about who has won the pub tender?
I can't right now. We are literally just about to close that one out, and as soon as we do, we can announce that one.
Thank you very much. Question from Luke and Kelly. Has the site been allocated for the location of the old foundation stone as handed over at the end of October?
No, it hasn't, Lou, not yet. We need to do that. We're still thinking about whether, we ideally don't want to put it into the floor. We'd like to try and put it into a wall or a plinth. So no, we're still thinking about that at the moment.
And Lauren Gibbard has asked, how many full season tickets have been sold and paid for at the moment, and how many fully paid up debentures have been sold?
I'm going to have to bring in Claudia here to give the numbers on that one.
I don't see Claudia on screen.
Is she there?
I don't see.
Sorry, I've not unmuted myself while I was speaking. My bad. Sorry, Jane, could you just repeat that if that's okay?
I'll need to re-find it. It was something.
It was about the numbers of debentures that we sold and season tickets that we sold.
Yes, so we're looking at just over 3,000 debentures and non-refundable season ticket, but obviously we're still at the stage where there's some people are sitting at a reservation stage and still need to complete the payment, and then some people have already completed that. So I think just under 2,000 people have already paid and set up the direct debits or paid up front, but we still have a number of people who we are waiting payment for. But we're still quite confident we can get that 3,000 of reservations that we originally have to be confirmed.
Joe, I'm going to give you a bit of a rest. You've just done however many, and I'll just bring in a couple of other people and questions that have come in.
Yeah.
So one from Nigel Higgs on income streams, a couple of questions on our revenue strategy. I guess this is for commercial or marketing. So either Claudia, do we have a clear idea of what our key target markets are in order of priority, and what are our sources of differential advantage against each of these markets? Either or.
Yeah, I've just unmuted, sorry. I think it depends what you're talking about. Whether you're talking about fans or whether you're talking about commercial targets or not. I think that's different things. I don't know what you're aimed at there, Nigel. Really, is that a question for Claudia or a question for me? That doesn't feel like it's about companies we should be going after. Although if it is, I can certainly answer that quite easily.
Have a go with that, Ivor, and then Nigel can follow up if he wishes.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, as always, it's targeting anybody really that wants to sponsor us. We will target them. So there's the blanket approach to sales to try and bring in as many national and international companies as we can possibly lay our hands on. The truth of it is we are a localized club. We are a League One club, and therefore it often comes down to smaller local businesses. Although we've got several companies involved, like Kappa and Rest and Waste, that are actually really big companies. They're far from small companies. Your Golf Travel and the likes. So it is a question of using the sporting agencies for the bigger deals if needs be. Although you'd be surprised that actually we do better ourselves. And we're hoping to have some good news soon on the really big sponsorship. So there is a constant strategy of approaching everyone that we possibly can to get the right kind of sponsorship and the right kind of partners for us. And at the moment we've done pretty well on that. But if it was about actual fans and who we're targeting, then I think that would be more for Claudia to answer.
Okay, thanks, Ivor. There is one for you here, which is Edmund Flynn has asked stadium naming. Any update on this?
Yeah, I just said we are working on a deal, and hopefully we'll have something to say in the new year. But yeah, it is a very, very difficult time for deals like that. There's no doubt about that. It's very difficult. The markets at the moment are tough. There is no doubt about that. So fingers crossed that we can get something across the line.
Thank you, Ivor. Claudia, a follow up to, could Claudia clarify the 3,000 debentures and non-refundable season ticket figure? Is that total or both? Sorry, is that the total of both? And specifically, how many just debentures sold and how many just non-refundable season tickets sold? And how many joint debentures, non-refundable season tickets? I think it's basically all the figures you've got.
Yes. So I'd have to run the figures separately, and I can provide that information just to be absolutely accurate at this stage, because obviously everything changes quite on a daily basis when people still sort of phoning up and, I forgot to set up my direct debit, or, I still want to pay, etc. To answer the first question, it was altogether number of non-refundable season tickets only, debentures only, and then non-refundable season plus debentures. So I think we've ended up with literally just over 3,030 altogether in total for reservations. And obviously this splits into actual people who have paid and then people who are still in the reservation stage. So I'm happy to provide Jane with the numbers of the splits once I run some reporting tomorrow.
Great, thanks, Claudia. I'm conscious that questions are still coming in, but numbers of attendees, participants are dropping. And so we've got 30 odd questions unanswered at the moment. I don't think we're going to get through them all. Can I suggest that people don't put any more questions in now? You can, of course, always email any of the Dons Trust board members. Our emails are always first name dot last name at thedonstrust.org if you want to get hold of any of us. And we'll just run a couple of Dons Trust type questions here. There was one about how and when will the new DT board chair be appointed? And so I'll just field that one for a second. What normally happens is the last meeting of the old board, if you like, that met yesterday evening, and actually as normal protocol ensures, we invite the new board members who aren't actually elected until the end of this meeting. They observe that meeting, so they joined us last night. We had a discussion at the end of that meeting about Dons Trust chair, and vice chair roles, and the secretary has put out a request for nominations for people who are interested in standing, and I think we've got a deadline of sometime over this weekend to get any nominations in for people who wish to stand for that. We have expedited that process. Normally that would take until the January meeting, but people, you know, we're conscious that we want to get on and do stuff quite quickly, and so that process has been expedited. So we should be able to announce, assuming somebody stands for it and is nominated to do it and accepted by the rest of the board, then we should be able to announce something within the next 2 weeks on who will be the new Dons Trust board chair. We've then got a few more questions on Broncos, which we might come back to. A question from James McDonald. I'm not sure who this is for, so I just wanted to ask about audit. Do we have internal audit planned, and what are the focus for them this year? I assume BDO cannot carry this out. Given our significant increase in liabilities, it would be useful to know that our controls enable payments.
I'll field this one, Jane. Yeah. No, we don't have an internal audit team. We run on a very skeleton staff, so an internal audit team would be somewhat of a luxury, and it tends to be restricted to your big PLCs. Having said that, I'm a former internal manager of Rolls-Royce in the aerospace department, so I've got a lot of experience of making sure controls are up to speed and improving business practice. So that's my background. So I'd like to think I offer a bit there. If we were going to get an internal audit to run alongside an external audit, it would be costly, but it's not something we've felt we need in the past. So whilst a fair question, it's not something we'll explore. It's something I see as part of my role to make sure we have everything in place to be as successful as we can be on the finance front. And yes, we absolutely do have controls in place in which to make the necessary payments, not just for loan providers, but for everyone who we owe money to.
Thanks, Tom. Joe, can I bring you back in on a couple?
Yep.
A couple on Plough Lane again. So will it be, Mark Lewis, will it be possible for Joe to update about when the shop at Plough Lane may be open, may be able to open in 2021, please? I've vested interest.
So one of the things we're looking to do, obviously, you know, aside from the football side of things and when crowds may be able to return, the view is always that we want to try and get the stadium operating and parts of it operating sooner rather than later. I can tell you that on Monday we have our those guys who are going to be fitting out our shop are coming in. They'll take about 2 to 3 days to finish that. We will then over some of the break start to try and populate that with stock, with a view that as soon as we can in early January we will be able to open the shop to fans to come in to see. So that is our intention. It will be, I can't give you an exact date, but it will be somewhere between I think the beginning and the middle of January, by the time that we're able to do that, to make sure that it's safe enough and clear enough to be able to do that, and that the front area is all finished. We also, as soon as we can, we'd like to be able to open the pub. You know, we have received the license for the pub, so as soon as that is ready, and again the area is safe to do so from an access point of view, we'd want to open that. So it's likely that we will see the shop and hopefully the pub open potentially before there would be a case of having crowds into matches.
Thank you. And there's a couple of questions very similar. The big wall behind the south stand, can you confirm something's happening to that? Rumours of a large projection. Can you advise, please?
Yeah, so I have now been given approval from Galliards. I asked them a few weeks back whether they would allow us to project a large image onto the back of their wall. They love the idea. I've always felt it would be a really great thing to do, to effectively have the largest scoreboard in the world. I think it'd be a really lovely little PR thing for us. So absolutely, we will be looking into that And like I said, we've had Galliard's blessing on that one. So yeah, we would definitely be giving that a try.
Thanks. And I'm conscious that other Don's Trust board members haven't spoken. There's a question from Roger Hopkinson. What do the existing DTB members, i.e. prior to the recent election, believe are the most important issues to be tackled over the next 4 years? So Tim, Hannah, myself, Luke, Ed, Graham, trying to work out who's still. So I'll look at my screen and go across the top line. So Hannah, do you want to have a go first on that?
Yeah, I would say that one of the major priorities is really about strategy and us setting a strategy as the Don's Trust that we can give to the club and really sets the direction for the where we want to see the club go for the next 5, 10 plus years. It will enable us to make decisions, well, hopefully, make decisions much more quickly and in line with what members think and feel. That's really what I stood for in the election and what I think a lot of us agree are a major priority going forward.
Thanks, Hannah. Tim? Tim, you're on mute.
Apologies. Firstly, constitution, which I've already mentioned. Within that, there's governance and sustainability from a structural point of view. But above all, sorry about the sirens. That's a fire engine. Paying in the interest on time of all our debt repayments, making the substantive loan repayments, and we'll achieve that in the shorter term by refinancing.
Thanks, Tim. Luke?
Pretty similar to everybody else, I think, making the stadium work. But in order to do that, we need to give the club the strategy and the aims of what the membership wants. We've obviously got a sizable debt that we need to pay down. So next 4 years, 4 years probably not that long to start implementing everything. But as Tim says, constitution needs to be updated. We're kind of entering a bit more of a digital world, and I'd like to see us embrace that even more than we are at the moment. So all power to that, because I think it's really brought some people together today, and it's been really nice seeing a more engaged kind of group with a larger membership than we would get in the back bar at Kingsmeadow.
Graham?
Hi, everyone. I think primarily, well, hopefully we've secured our fan-owned status now. We've got over all that nonsense. So the next thing's to earn the trust of the fans back, I think, and then find out what they want us to do. If we can be a good Don's Trust board and ask the fans at every opportunity and get them to shape what we do over the next 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. They're the owners, they're the members. We're just here to represent them. I'm very much, it's been great serving with the old, as of a couple of hours time, the old Don's Trust board. I'm very excited to work with the new Don's Trust board. I think we're going to have a hella busy year or two. And there's plenty of work to be done, but it's going to be good. And if we do it right and we represent the members well, we can prosper. We can become debt free over the next, what was the question, how many years? Next few years. We can be, we can look at whether it's a ground share or whether it's an enabling development that gets us a training ground. There's money to be made from the greatest story in football, and I think it's an exciting time. But first of all, let's be a good board, find out what the members want us to do, and follow through on that.
Thanks, Graham. Edward?
Yeah, it's just we've spent a huge amount of money and a huge amount of our time and effort in building a new stadium. Let's make it work as well as we can. Let's make it a fantastic asset for the club and for the community so that we can make enough money to pay the debts back. And then let's keep an eye out for really good long-term opportunities, actually of the type that you were describing in your manifesto, Roger, around the stadium district and the precinct and what we can do to really, really embed ourselves back in Plough Lane.
And I guess I should, have I covered everybody who was already there? Shout if I've missed you out, for which apologies. And so I think pretty much all of the things that others have said are important priorities. I think I will be, yeah, I think there's some stuff that we need to do as a membership organisation as well. It's sort of increasing membership, ensuring that we're engaged with our members, giving opportunities like this, doing more of the things that Graham has introduced in the last year. You know, meet the DPB, opportunities for us to hear and respond to members on a more regular basis than these formal, you know, sort of meetings are important to me as well. Governance is massively important to me, about making sure we've got the right structure. And setting the strategy would, you know, if I was to choose three things, it would be the strategy as well, because without that, it's really difficult for Joe and the executive team to implement stuff, knowing that they've got, you know, it's what the trust want to do in the direction that we want to go in. That's that. We're coming up to 10:30. There are still 27 unanswered questions, for which apologies. We'll put those in Hannah and George. I think we can pull all the questions off. We'll do that how we did last time, and we'll try and go through them and answer them. I think there's just a couple of any other business which I'll hand back to Mark for. But before we do that, I just want to, this is obviously Mark's last meeting, and I just want to formally thank Mark for a huge amount of effort and time and commitment and devotion to the trust over many years. And I get the figures wrong all the time. I think he was elected to the board in 2013. Keep nodding, Mark, please, and tell me if I get it wrong. He was elected to the board in 2013 and has served as a member and as chair and vice chair, I think. He was secretary before that, has been on fundraising committees. I will happily say quite clearly that we wouldn't be in the position we are with the stadium without Mark's direction, leading the stadium committee over the last year or so. And just on a very, very personal level, I'd like to thank Mark for all his support and friendship and mentorship, if you like, over the last however many years on the board. It's been an absolute pleasure serving on the board with Mark, and on behalf of the rest of the Dons Trust Board, PLC, AFC Wimbledon, and all of the trust members, thank you. And I hope you get to put your feet up soon.
So Jane, that's very kind indeed. Thank you. And I was given a great send off at the Dons Trust Board last night too. So I'm really grateful for that. It is my last meeting as Dons Trust chair and board member. It's been a privilege to serve. It's been hard work. I wish the board all the best to the board for 21. I'm looking forward to taking a back seat, actually in the back of the West Stand. So thank you everyone for your support. A few more things from me. I'd also like to thank all the volunteers, employees, members, fans and employees of the Trust and Club for your support over the past year. You know, it's been a very trying time, but you've stuck with us. Just a couple of AOB, I'll look to other board members for any other AOBs they want before we go, but just one from me, which is that at last night's Dons Trust Board, we marked our congratulations to Dons Local Action Group, or DLAG, on the Sport for Social Change Award. I really think that's worth celebrating. That's quite a thing. DLAG's gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour in a fantastically short space of time. Are there any other parish notices any other board members would like to raise?
I've got one. There will be something going out for the Junior Dons tomorrow, with thanks to Claudia and Carlo at the club for pulling off an amazing thing, which is exciting. I've seen it and I'm very excited. So all Junior Dons, parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, keep an eye on the official site and the Dons Trust official site tomorrow and enjoy. Brilliant.
Anyone else? Graham.
Not so much a parish notice as such, but keep December the 30th free, everybody. It's a bit of a plug, this. Next Meet the DTB session with Luke and myself, aka Baileys and Baubles. More of the same, as similar things to tonight. We can hopefully fill in a few gaps if any questions we didn't get to, but in a less formal manner, probably, with more Baileys and Baubles. So yes, December the 30th, there'll be an email invite coming out soon. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Graham. Anyone else on the board? I'm seeing shaking heads. So I've said thank you. Can I say on behalf of the board, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We look forward to seeing you at Plough Lane in the very, very near future. Thank you very much.